this uneasiness about my sexuality and that it never sat well with me. And the biggest thing I struggled with was actually coming to terms with it within myself.
Hey guys, what's up? This week I have a very special interview to share with you. It's Campbell Johnstone, the first openly gay All Black. In our heart-to-heart conversation, he tells me about coming out to his teammates, the inner struggle he had as a player, and we also talk footy and dive into his thoughts on Razor's rebuild and the future of the All Blacks. Guys, let's get to it. Campbell, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
I know, thanks for the invitation. Good to be here.
You know, I posted a story on Instagram that finally got to you about a year later. I guess someone sent it to you. I was just so grateful for the internet in that moment.
Instagram and the internet's is an amazing place, but sometimes it has its own ways of getting messages to people.
Mate, you're a brave man opening up your DMs, though. I tend to avoid those folders, so I appreciate your courage.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I've had no negative feedback or anything, and everyone's been really, quite, really good about it and nice, and it's heartwarming really to find out that, people have probably grown up a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'd love to get to that in a minute in terms of your personal story. But if you don't mind, I'm such a big All Blacks fan. And I remember your career very well. I guess my question is, once you get out of that All Blacks environment and you're also in the Crusaders, which is famously intense, are you just kind of so over rugby that you don't even want to watch it anymore? Or do you still stay up to date with the All Blacks and the Crusaders?
Yeah, I think every player, and I went through that phase, is that when you sort of stop playing rugby, and if it is, you stop because of your choice, and you've come to the conclusion that, you're getting a bit long in the tooth, or, the body's just not handling it anymore, and you've come to peace with that. You kind of do go through a phase where you're like, I've sort of got other things to do, and you sort of start, actually getting a free weekend here and there, and you think this is fantastic. Give it, it was probably about 3 months, 4 months, you sort of start drifting back and start looking and, watching games and just sort of keeping your eye on the things and reading the paper, and, and you never actually you never lose that love of the game, but you do get that sort of spell where you just take some time out, but you definitely just come back, like I love watching the game now and really enjoy it. And I guess more so because you don't, you just have that vested interest where you just love the team, and you want, for the teams I support, that you want them to win, and you don't really have that added pressure where it's, it's up to you to you and your team to prepare and do all that. So you actually find this new enjoyment for the game, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of former All Blacks say they actually find it more stressful watching it than playing it, because at least, as you said, on the field, you can kind of do something, you can react. Do your stress levels get pretty high when you're watching?
I'm pretty relaxed, so I don't get too stressed watching. I do get a little bit upset probably when the especially when the All Blacks lose and that, but I don't get too stressed. I mean, I guess it's funny because I guess like when we were playing, and because I was very fortunate to play with some great teams, is that we never had the idea that we were going to lose. We always had confidence that we were going to win, even if it was going to take, right down to the last minute. So now when I'm watching the games and, the teams I love, the Crusaders and Barretts and the All Blacks, and that I sort of watch it with that, that thought process, knowing like, the guys have still got this. There's still time. We've always, there's always belief.
Well, yes, the All Blacks winning record has taken a little bit of a dip in recent years. It's still around 77% post 2016, which ain't bad when you really zoom out and look at it. Now, I'm not going to make you re-pick the team or anything like that, but do you have any kind of general feelings about this new team that Razor's bringing along and how they're sort of tracking?
Yeah, I think they're coming along quite well. I mean, I think coaching staff there are doing everything they can and should be doing, and it's a rebuilding phase, and everyone knows that. And and you've got to start blooding players, and you've got to start, trying new things. Otherwise, All Blacks will just become stale, and will won't keep continuing to progress and be better and better. So, you've got to have these moments where it is a bit of a downturn, to use a term, and they will, lose a couple of games. But I think people really have to look at the big picture and say, well, we've got to build for, the World Cup in 4 years, and that's what we should be, really focusing on, because we haven't won the World Cup for a couple of years now. I know that's quite arrogant to say we haven't won it for a couple of years, but that's what our focus should be, and people should understand that, and I think everyone does. But I think, as you said, people get pretty on the edge and on their seat when the All Blacks lose, and then they get pretty, disgruntled, and you start throwing stones and things like that. But I think if you keep in the mind of the big picture, then I think we are tracking right, even though it's very early to say. But I think, a couple of losses here are better to have the losses here than have them in the final of the World Cup.
No, mate, I totally agree with you. And I think New Zealanders have gotten a little bit more mature with that. Seems to be.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, you understand. I mean, because it is New Zealand, and rugby's a passion, and it's like, most countries who have a national game sort of do carry that passion, and it's a badge of honour, and I think that's one thing I would never want to die out of New Zealand, because I think it's something that is, it makes us, it's a part of us, and it also puts that pressure, I guess, on the players to know that it's not just about them. It's so much more.
I agree. And I think, it's hard for other countries to understand, but it might seem like we're negative about the All Blacks, or we're being, very critical at times. I actually see that as an expression of real passion, because I think that just shows how much people care about it,
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there, and it is about passion, and it shows you that people do care. But also, I think we've got to be mindful that there is a line, and there is a time to just pull back and be sensible about it all.
Well, speaking of passion, I mean, your All Black career encompassed one of the greatest series I ever saw in my lifetime, which was the Lions series in 2005. I mean, I just loved that. I mean, as a fan, it was some of my greatest All Black memories. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you were playing there in that game in Wellington. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I played in the Wellington game and the Auckland game. It was a fantastic series. I mean, this series, the Lions series, the Lions had come out with this immensely strong team, and the series was dubbed as like the curtain raiser to the World Cup, because New Zealand we were going to host the World Cup, and so everything was sort of planned as a dress rehearsal for the country for the World Cup. So there was this just this fantastic atmosphere within the country that was just amazing. Like, you'd drive down, you'd be on the bus and drive, between cities and that, and you'd see farmers would have the hay bales all stacked up saying "Go All Blacks" and things like that, and it was just incredible. The whole nation was 100% behind the tour and the All Blacks.
Now, of course, that game in Wellington it's one of the most famous All Black games ever, really, because it is considered the greatest Dan Carter performance, the greatest number 10 performance ever. So it's a very famous, iconic game. My question to you, though, is, are you so focused on your job that you're not even aware that DC's having a blinder, or did you kind of realize something special was happening?
No, you do realise that they're having a really good game. I mean, you're aware of your players around you, and every game some players stand out more, and I recall that game, and Danny was having one of his incredibly special games, and he's such a gifted athlete, and his ability is just incredible, and both on and off the field now, what he does for rugby is incredible too.
Well, that's a nice transition there about looking off the field, because as amazing as it is to be an All Black and all the games you played for the Crusaders, to me, the most incredible thing you did was actually opening up about your personal life in a way that hadn't been done before from an All Black. And I think you've just impacted millions of people with that. Could you just tell me a little bit about how that decision came about? Because I'm imagining it was actually probably a pretty difficult one.
Yeah, well, so I had played, and obviously, as you know, played in that, and had this this uneasiness about my sexuality, and that it never sat well with me. And the biggest thing I struggled with was actually coming to terms with it within myself, and that was my biggest hurdle. And I sort of overcome that, and I was, enjoying my life and being, who I was, and that, and we sort of came to a conclusion was it last year, I think it was. I went and spoke with Rob Nickel and of the Players Association, and we talked about a few things, and everyone's mentioned, and they always have mentioned, this could potentially help a lot of people, and I was very naive about that, and I kind of didn't think it would, and I kind of didn't, think it's just little old me. But we decided that it could be worthwhile, and I was now at this point, and I had been for many years now, very happy with the way I was, and accepting myself, and I thought, like, I can do this now, and help other people, and stand by it, and so yeah, that was how we sort of came to the conclusion, and I had the support of my partner Ben, and we decided that we'd make the announcement and see how it goes. And I was shocked. I remember talking to Joe and Rob prior to prior to the interview with Hilary Barry about, I didn't think it would actually spread that far, and I sort of thought it would maybe be, mainstream media in New Zealand and maybe Australia a little bit within the rugby community. But I was completely wrong on that, and it spread around the world like wildfire. And as I said to Rob and Joe the next day, when all these messages are coming in and it's just being picked up by every media organisation around the world, I said, oh, shit, I didn't think it would do this. And Joe and Rob started laughing, and I said, oh, did you guys think it would? And they were like, yes. And I said, oh, why didn't you tell me? And they said, well, we've known you for a long time, and you probably would have just run for the hills. And I was like, they said, we sort of got you there, and we didn't want you to run off. And I was like, oh, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, and, all the messages I received, if I could sum it up in one feeling, it was just one of the most humble experiences I've ever had in my life. I mean, just people telling me their stories and what they went through, and hearing that people had given away the game they loved or the sport they enjoyed so much because they didn't fit the mold, or they didn't feel they felt safe, or something like that they had to actually stop playing that sport. And to hear that sort of upset me, because I personally, there was, my personal belief was like, I was never ever going to give this game away, like that. I was never ever going to stop, and my out was actually telling some people, and just telling friends that I was gay, and that, and so I could relieve that anxiety, so I could still carry on playing. And so to hear people that had actually stopped playing because of this reason was quite sad and humbling in the same respects, because they also said in the same message that after hearing my story and the media and all that they've actually decided to go back to the sport they love, take it back up as either a participant or as a spectator. So, so it was just so humbling.
Mate, that is absolutely awesome. At the time during your career, was it something you confided in your teammates, or did you very much just keep it to a few people close to you in your personal life?
So I came out to my parents first, and then I confided to a few of my teammates and that, and then it sort of just evolved and grew like that a little bit. And it was, to coin a phrase, it was one of the best kept but worst kept secrets in the rugby. Like we always had media calling and saying, oh, like, I know who it is, like the bit of a witch hunt. I know who it is, like we're going to, expose it, or we're going to run a story. And then, players in that saying, oh, well, if you run that story, then you're not going to get any more interviews in this area and that, and then they'd all back off. So, I was very lucky that I had, a massive support network and just people that just generally cared and respected, my privacy and that, which is the main thing. And also, like the NZR, a lot of people talk about New Zealand rugby, and especially in New Zealand here, about being the big bad, big bad monster of New Zealand rugby, and sometimes not looking out for players. But I can just hand on heart say they are the most, respectful and caring organisation ever. I mean, not once did they even try to force me or even expose myself to the media and that, even though, it probably would have benefited them. And, not once they just respected my privacy and my values. So I was very lucky.
Just as a final question on this topic, so that people in different cultures sort of understand, I mean, New Zealand's quite unique. Now, I don't want to necessarily say it's homophobic, but there is a sense of these traditional, very masculine sports. People are very stoic. Being understated is very much the Kiwi thing. You're not really meant to talk about your feelings or even your personal life. So does that kind of sound accurate to you? Did you feel like that was the culture that you were in?
Yeah. It is accurate, and I think I sort of try to explain it because New Zealand's not homophobic, and I explain it more so as New Zealand's very conservative. And when I was growing up, you didn't kiss your wife on the street. That was, you didn't make out with your girlfriend on the street or in public. That was frowned upon. It wouldn't matter whether you're two guys or a girl and a guy. It was frowned upon. And so you see, it was very conservative. So that stuff, you kept it, behind closed doors and that. So I think that's probably the better way to explain it. It was very conservative. I mean, because if you look at New Zealand's history, we're incredibly non-homophobic. I mean, we've had so many different walks of life go through our parliament with the LGBT community and that. So yeah, I think we're just very conservative and like to keep things private, and everyone should toe the line and keep your emotions to yourself, and your hands to yourself, to use a kind of a term, if that makes sense.
No, that makes absolutely perfect sense, and I think that's why it's even more impactful what you did, and just sharing your story. And honestly, it made me proud to be a New Zealander. So I just thank you for doing that. I thought it was just awesome, man.
Thank you. No, it was it was wonderful. And as I said, like I've grown so much as a person from it, just by how at the start I said, just so how humbling it all has been. I've never had such a humbling experience in my life.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, you're going to want to hit the link below and become a member on my channel. There is an extended version of this chat, and in it, Campbell Johnstone opens up about the fact that he's in better shape now than he was when he played for the All Blacks. Not very common that professional athletes get more lean and jacked after they stop playing rugby, but that's exactly what he's done. He shares his workout routines and a few diet tips as well. Let's get back to it. All right, I'm going to finish up with a question. I've wanted to ask you this for about 20 years, okay? Now, I don't want to embarrass you with this because I'm sure you're probably too humble to accept it, but I want to ask about that famous headline from the coach when you were called up to the All Blacks. He says he's the strongest shoulder in the country. Now, what does that really mean to a layman? Is he talking about that the scrum won't collapse when you're playing? What did he mean by that?
So, yeah, that comment probably made my career, but it also haunted me for many years. But so the actual quote is, he has the strongest right shoulder in the game, and Steve Hansen said that. And so the right shoulder for a tight head prop is the shoulder that you use to lock the loose head prop into the scrum, and once you've got them locked, you sort of put it on the back of the loose head's neck, and you can actually control and drive the loose head anywhere you want, and you become you actually control the whole scrum. So being able to do that is quite an art form, and that's what he was referring to. And
Well,
so yeah.
mate, I've been waiting for that explanation for 20 years so I can finally sleep well at night, because that has haunted me. But Campbell, look, you're a great player, even better bloke, to be honest with you. You've inspired a lot of people. I really appreciate you coming on this channel. It's been growing a lot, and you're actually the first All Black I've had on here. So thank you for christening
Nice.
with me.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it, and really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Awesome, brother. Go the All Blacks.